First of all, I want to talk to you about how I've grown academically in my journey. And then I'm going to talk to you about the professional growth that I've experienced. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you about the personal growth that I feel that I've experienced over these last 3 to 4 years now. First of all, let me share with you how I believe I've grown academically through the doctoral program here at Lamar University. The first thing that I have tried to do is, when I've learned, excuse me, I want to put my timer going over here. One of the things that I have learned is to try to simplify what we've been taught into words that I can clearly understand. And the first thing when it comes to research is asking these 2 questions. One is how to ask questions and how to find answers. And what I've done is, in my thinking, is sort of capture the idea of qualitative and quantitative research approach into those questions. First of all, the qualitative approach really is about finding out the why. Why do certain things happen? And in Creswell's identification of phenomenology and case study and narrative study and so forth, all those things, all those approaches, qualitative approaches, have in common is to try to dig down deep into the why certain things happen. The other part, the quantitative part, is really more about the what. How do we quantify what happens? Because even in quantitative research, it's very difficult to clearly establish a causal relationship. So I've at least learned at this point that it's very difficult to get at the reasons why things actually happen. In the quantitative aspect, McMillan and Schumacher actually went on to say that it's describing what happens. That statistics are descriptive and inferential statistics get very complicated because, again, you have to go a long stretch in order to develop a causal relationship. But the shift in research over the last 20 years has taken us to what we're calling an evidence-based inquiry versus the traditional approach. The traditional approach of research had the notion that somehow we could approach a problem or a phenomenon with this blank tablet, that we can approach it with a non-biased opinion. But the reality is, postmodern philosophy has taught us that really we have opinions and that there is already evidence that exists about a particular phenomenon. What we need to do is be honest about our biases in that evidence and describe the evidence as it truly is and define the data as it truly is. In fact, a description of this is in a study just recently in 2011 by our own Southwestern Educational Research Association President Bruce Thompson, who is a professor at Texas A&M. He was a co-author in Research in Special Education, Scientific Methods and Evidence-Based Practices in 2011, published by the Council for Exceptional Children, in this study they decided that evidence-based inquiry is employed as a methodology for establishing quality indicators, in this case for special needs instruction. And so I've learned that regardless of how much you control for bias or other variables, that evidence-based instruction says that there is some bias there, and you have to take that into account. Now, evidence-based research and inquiry has impacted my own approach in public education, as well as my new position as a pastor in ministry. As an administrator in public education, evidence-based inquiry was applied when we were asking a lot of questions about why some new teachers do better in their first year than other new teachers. And so as we begin to explore the evidence and identifying our own biases, because we felt like the reason they were doing so good is because we were providing such great support, what we found is that really a great number of them are doing good because of the qualities and abilities that they bring to the task. And a lot of their success was based on the support that they received at the campus. But of course, we gave ourselves some credit. So that's just an idea of how evidence-based inquiry worked as an administrator. As a pastor now, I find myself currently leading a church to consider its community ministry in terms of data that makes up the community demographics. And the church has no data about that, so one of the things that I'm doing is trying to lead us to collect the data so we can find out how to best meet the needs of people in our church community and our community at large. Now, I want to say that not only have I grown academically, but I have also grown. I would like to say not only have I grown academically, but the coursework that I've undertaken through the doctoral program marked the convergence of both my personal and professional life. So I want to talk to you about my professional growth. So let me start with my professional life and work back to my personal life. As many of you know, my personal life was changed radically and has changed radically in the last 3 years. I referred a moment ago that I served as a district level administrator. I was recruiting, training, evaluating new teachers, and as I worked in that capacity, I applied a good deal of the learning that I gained in the doctoral program. For example, implementing research into our new teacher certification program that involved evidence-based inquiry. Another example involved researching effective teachers in relation to my own research interest, emotional intelligence. And as a result of that research, our program began to teach emotional literacy and emotional intelligence in the classroom, and that program continues to teach those today to new teachers. But as the district faced financial constraints, some of you know that I went back to the classroom where I had the privilege of teaching advanced placement U.S. history students. Those are 11th graders, juniors in high school. And I was really interested in teaching students about history from their own emotional experience, context, so that when they came to dealing with problems in history, that it was personal and they could be passionate about it. Because in an advanced placement class, students have to be able to answer problems with relation to, let's see here, there we are. I'm talking about my experience as an administrator, I mentioned that, and then now I'm talking about my experience as a classroom teacher. I really wanted to teach them from the emotional perspective, from life experience from an emotional perspective, because in other words, when they were looking at why certain events happened in U.S. history, I wanted them to become acquainted with the individual and the emotions that the people making decisions, the people that were undergoing the results of the decisions. What were the emotions involved, for instance, in the Great Depression, and what were the emotions of the different politics that played out in the Great Depression. And so appealing to the students' own emotional experience in their life, whether it was poverty or whether it was thinking about someone who was suffering, that they were able to capture in their memory their experience of learning about the Great Depression, just as an example, or or the removal of Native Americans, or whatever we were studying. So this really helped them, and as a result, just a few days ago, I got a text saying that the students did better than they have done in the last 4 years on their AP exam. So I was very happy about that. So the next thing I want to talk about is my experience now as a pastor. Some of you may know that I've been offered the opportunity to return to ministry as a full-time pastor. Before going into public education, I had about 10 years experience, and I never thought I'd be back in full-time ministry. But as I've approached that, I have discovered that this is the context in which I have learned that personal life and professional life converge to become really a continuous kind of experience. I've created this little Venn diagram because I believe that the two should never be separated. I believe that when we try to radically separate our professional experience from our personal experience, then we create cognitive dissonance and emotional incongruence, and thereby we lose a part of who we are. You see, I believe integrity gives continuity to our personal and professional life. So at this point, I want to talk for a moment about how my experiences in the coursework of the doctoral program helped to formulate what I've come to embrace and believe as a practitioner and a scholar. So I want to talk first about the cultural differences class. The cultural differences class. As I walked through the process of self-discovery in cultural differences class, for the first time, I came to appreciate my own race and color and ethnicity. And as a result, I had a deeper, truer, more authentic appreciation for others. Instead of caring about others of color or others of another gender or whatever the differences were, instead of caring for them because they were different, I cared for them because we have mutual respect and we really have similar experiences. And it is really hard to define all the things that create for us who we come to know ourselves to be. An example, for instance, is a very extensive study being done out of the Massachusetts General Hospital. It's an ongoing longitudinal study, and it measures many variables involved over 80 years of life. The familial issues, childhood, psychological variables, general health, physical activity, marriage, relationships, illnesses, genetics, intellectual functioning. All those have a lot to do with how a person develops. So it's really hard to know what it is that makes us who we are, but I do know that understanding our cultural differences helps to give us a clearer sense of identity. The next course is the learning theory class. In learning theory course, I was met with a challenge about how people actually learned, and as a result, I had the opportunity to write about my own learning theory. Now, it's akin to Mesereau's theory of transformation, in which the learner is driven to make meaning as a result of the experiences that they encounter. It's important to know that learning has got to be authentic. At the Center on Organization and Restructuring Schools, a study was conducted in 1995 by Fred Newman and his colleagues at the University of Wisconsin. Over 2,000 students were found to have significantly higher achievement on challenging tasks when they experienced authentic learning. And how that defined is learning that involves solving a problem that has to do with their life. And as a result of that, I really believe that when a person is emotionally involved, when they are truly connected to solving problems, that's when they really learn the most. And so this led me to write my own learning paper, as we all had to do, my own learning theory paper. And mine was entitled Emotivity and the Modem of Learning, in which I established that what I believe to be the prime motivation for learning is emotional experience. The last class that I want to talk about very quickly is Leadership Theory and Ethics. In this class, I was challenged to define my own leadership ethic. Now, this led to a kind of research crisis for me, because in light of what I had studied from Festinger in his theory of cognitive dissonance and Piaget's idea of disequilibrium, I considered that an ethic, for me, could not be one in which I continued to live in cognitive dissonance or some sort of disequilibrium. I came to realize that if I was going to be true to who I was, then I would have to be true to what I felt, to what I believed, to what I felt, to what I thought, to what I believed, to what I say, and to how I behave. And my idea of integrity is to make sure that those are lined up in representing who I am. So my drive toward emotional and cognitive congruence led me to rethink my leadership ethic, as the question was raised in class when Dr. Mixon asked us, should we as leaders have a personal ethic, and if so, what should it be? So yes, I do believe we should have a personal ethic, and that for me, that ethic has radically changed my life in the last 3 to 4 years. There's so much more to say, but mostly I'm proud and thankful to be a part of your life. I look forward to seeing you all soon, and I pray for all your success. May the Lord bless and keep you all. This is Wendell, and I'll see you soon.